Part 19. Fantasy, I am the big boss behind the scenes. Author, Guanyun Taoist. Chapter 181. The Supreme Void Emperor has revived. Save humanity from fire and water. Emperor of the Void, calm down this dark turmoil. Bless the world again. Hundreds of millions of people are excited and trembling with excitement. Millions of years later, the great Emperor of the Void will return to the world to quell the chaos. This is a great blessing for the human race and a great blessing for all creatures in the universe. Blood sacrifice to the Emperor's blood, awakening the fighting spirit of the previous life and returning. Haha, it's just a moth rushing to the flame, so what if the void is empty? It's hard to calm down the chaos. The Stone Emperor's voice was indifferent. His tall and burly body was surrounded by the energy of chaos, like a peerless demon god. He raised the black halberd in his hand and pointed it at the Void Emperor. The sharp blade shook the sky. Boom! The great Emperor of the Void activated the Void Mirror, and the brilliance shone for eternity, spreading throughout the universe, suppressing it forward, and attacking the Stone Emperor. The Stone King raised the dragon-patterned black gold halberd in his hand and moved forward to fight against the Void Mirror. The two extreme divine weapons collided together, causing an endless roar. In the fierce collision, both the Void Emperor and the Stone Emperor retreated, and the Emperor's blood spilled into the sky. Your state is not right. It is not in its full glory. You only have an incomplete imperial body and part of your Taoism during your lifetime. In this state, you dare to kill me. The Stone Emperor wiped away the blood from his palms, his eyes were cold, and he understood the current state of the Void Emperor. It's enough to kill you. Kill. The Void Emperor was silent and continued to attack forward with the Void Mirror. The mirror was bright, the Void Avenue spread, blooming with 9 colors, and actually condensed into a void flower. It bloomed there, the space solidified, and even time was gone. It's still. Where the flower of the void is, it's almost eternity. Time stands still, the void is stagnant, suppressing eternity. This is a taboo chapter in the Void Sutra. Ji Changqing's body trembled, and he could feel this power. This is the supreme secret that Emperor Void used to suppress the dark turmoil in the 8 wastes. It is a taboo chapter recorded in the Void Sutra. Weird Avenue. The Stone Emperor's face was solemn, and he felt the threat from this flower of the void. He was waiting attentively, but he never thought that the speed of this flower of the void was too fast, breaking through eternity, in 1/1000th of an instant. Arriving in front of him, he sank into the Stone Emperor's body. It was a force that was difficult to contend with, making the Stone Emperor's body instantly stiff and unable to move. Even his soul seemed to be imprisoned. Generally speaking, nothing can trap him at all. The Emperor's way exists. But now, Stone Emperor's body and soul seem to be frozen in an instant. Although it is only a short moment, it is enough to do many things. Brush. The great Emperor of the Void took action, slapping his palm forward, turning all the stars along the way into dust, and hitting the Stone Emperor's body. At the same time, the Void Mirror is also glowing, attacking together with the Void Emperor, casting down billions of rays of immortal killing light to destroy the Stone Emperor's soul. This is a kind of supreme power, which blooms brightly in an instant, explodes with all its strength, and approaches eternity. The palm breaks the body, the mirror breaks the soul. Before the Void Emperor arrived, the Stone Emperor was finally freed from this state, but it was obviously too late. He only had time to let out a loud roar, and then he was hit by the dual power of the Void Emperor and the Void Mirror. Boom! This was an extremely terrifying collision. The stars were shattered and everything turned into ashes. It was even mixed with the heart-stopping roar of the Stone Emperor. The power of the void is difficult to match. In addition, the Stone Emperor was hit by the flower of the void, and his soul and body were frozen for an instant. The Emperor of the Void seized the opportunity and struck mercilessly, directly beating the Stone Emperor's boundless imperial body to pieces, and the blood was as red as fairy clouds. All over the universe, destroying galaxy after galaxy. Did he kill an ancient supreme being with one move? The Void Emperor is too powerful, an ancient supreme being. He was actually killed with one strike. Billions of people roared excitedly, feeling that they saw hope. Killing the Stone Emperor with one blow, doesn't it mean that the other ancient supremes are no match for the Void Emperor? However, the cold words of another ancient supreme breaking the illusion of all human beings. It's just that I have never encountered this kind of avenue, so I suffered a big loss. The supreme heaven cannot be buried and the earth cannot be destroyed. How could it fall so easily? Really every day? As if to confirm the words of this ancient supreme being, the crimson clouds all over the universe shone brightly, gathered together again in an instant, transformed into the body of the Stone Emperor, and reappeared in the universe. The cheers of the human race suddenly stopped. Stop, everyone's heart is cold. Indeed, if you practice to the level of an ancient saint, you can be reborn with a drop of blood. How can the ancient supreme being who is so many levels higher than the saint fall so easily? The weird road actually caused me a big loss. Shi Huang showed a cruel smile. It's a pity that if you were in your prime, you might be able to kill me with this, but now that you are not even as good as me, how many times can you carry out such an attack? It won't take long, and you will wipe yourself out without me even needing to take action. Don't waste any more time. Let's go together and send Void on his way. It's just a remnant soul, and it wants to go against the will of heaven. The old things from the past will never happen again. Kill him, destroy him. At this moment, several ancient supreme beings moved, urging the boundless avenue, rushing into the universe, and wanted to join forces with the Stone Emperor to kill the Void Emperor. 4 ancient supreme beings who came out of the immortal mountain came to dominate the universe and joined forces. Fighting the Void? This was an extremely brutal battle. The Emperor of the Void fought against the 8 desolations, 1 against 4, killing with iron blood. But as the Stone Emperor said, after all, he was not in his prime state during his lifetime. Being besieged by the 5 Supremes, even if the great Emperor of the Void is also unable to defeat the 4 hands with his 2 fists. The Emperor's blood is spreading across the sky, and the divine light around him is becoming increasingly dim. The Void Emperor can no longer hold on. Who will help the Void Emperor? With 1 against 4, the Void Emperor has reached his limit. Billions of people screamed, the Void Emperor was too difficult. It was just a remnant soul that was revived, but now it has to fight against the 4 Supremes. This is a desperate battle. The Void Emperor has tried his best, but it is still difficult to quell the chaos. Who can come to help him and fight against the enemy with the Void Emperor? Fantasy, I am the big boss behind the scenes. Author, Guanyun Taoist. Chapter 182. Cut off all the ways. The great Emperor of the Void scolded, casting the forbidden chapter of the Void Sutra, and a blazing crack of light spread forward, as if it was going to divide the entire world into 2 halves. Boom! Thousands of rays of light roared. This ray of light was like Wan Yang, cutting off everything, dividing heaven and earth, as if it wanted to cut apart eternity, shine for eternity, and shake the world. Snort! An ancient supreme being was unable to dodge and was struck by this blazing light. Half of his body was cut off directly, and the supreme blood spilled into the sky. This is a supreme secret technique that cuts through the body and soul. It is extremely terrifying. Even as the supreme, it is difficult to fight against him. If one-on-one, even if the Void Emperor only possesses a partially incomplete imperial body and Taoism, he is still capable of overpowering the supreme, or even beheading him. But now, it is enough 4 ancient supreme beings besieged him. The ancient supreme being who was beheaded immediately retreated, and the other three supreme beings filled the vacancy and took the opportunity to take action against the Emperor of the Void. The power of the Supreme was surging, raging in the world, and the Emperor of the Void fought in all directions, but it was still difficult to resist all the attacks. He was hit on the shoulder by the attack of one of the ancient Supremes, and the Emperor's blood flowed. Hundreds of millions of people witnessed the scene and couldn't help but feel great sadness. The great Emperor of the Void was too difficult, 1 against 4, and all his opponents were in the past. It is an existence in the extreme realm of the Emperor's Deo. This is simply an unequal contest. Now that they have just fought, there are already dangers. If the time drags on for a longer time, I am afraid that even the great Emperor of the Void will not be able to compete with him. Defeated. Just when the Void Emperor struggled to meet the enemy and dangers arose. Suddenly, in the 5 domains, there were several majestic auras rising up, shocking the sky. Zhongzhou domain, within the territory of the Xiang dynasty. Brilliant like the sun-like brilliance, the secret realm of the Fuzi Valley reappeared, and the 6-foot-long golden Fuzi tree swayed, spreading divine brilliance, exuding an immortal golden luster. And the ancient coffin lying under the Fuzi tree, where the holy Emperor of the Sun was buried, but it was shaking violently. Finally, the ancient coffin exploded violently, the breath of the most holy, the most powerful sun surged, and the golden light shone in all directions. A majestic figure reappeared, swallowing up the mountains and rivers, majestic and heroic, suppressing the 3 people. Thousands of worlds, sweeping across the eternal reincarnation. He rushed into the air, directly joined the Void Emperor's battle circle, and faced the enemy with the Void Emperor, attacking the ancient Supreme. It was the Sun Emperor. At the critical moment when darkness fell, the Sun Emperor reappeared, and again blessed the human race. The Eastern Wasteland. Boom! The boundless land cracked, the rolling magma boiled, and an ancient coffin appeared, floating there. The ancient coffin was made of vicissitudes of life, and I don't know what kind of material it was made of. It lay quietly in the endless magma. There is chaotic mist surrounding it. What is even more shocking is that the ancient coffin body is actually covered with blood marks, which is shocking. The entire ancient coffin is almost dyed bright red, which is sad and strange. That is the blood coffin in which the Qing Emperor was buried has reappeared. Brush. The ancient coffin was opened, and the chaotic green lotus appeared, swaying with brilliance. A man in green clothes appeared, majestic, with green flowers flowing in his eyes, a scene of the birth of the universe and the creation of the world. The manifestation is profound and terrifying. He emerged from nothingness, stepped forward from prehistory, crossed the endless river of time, and descended into this life. That is the Qing Emperor, reappearing in the human world. Dark turmoil. The Qing Emperor raised his eyes and looked at the supreme battlefield above the 9 heavens. Without any hesitation, he stepped through the void and directly came to the 9 heavens to fight against the ancient Supreme. In the blink of an eye, after the Void Emperor, the Sun Holy Emperor and the Azure Emperor revived one after another, fighting bloody battles with the ancient Supreme Beings. 3 emperors and emperors from millions of years ago have appeared to fight against the darkness and turmoil. This scene is like a myth. After the Sun Holy Emperor and Qing Emperor joined the battlefield, the battle situation instantly reversed. The Great Emperor of the Void, the Holy Emperor of the Sun, and the Qing Emperor. All 3 were the most powerful people from millions of years ago and were superior to the ancient Supreme Beings. Now the 3 of them join forces, far surpassing the 4 ancient Supreme Beings. So weird. Shiwan couldn't help but growl, feeling that everything was out of his control, and he had a bad premonition in his heart. I can block 2 people and kill them in the shortest possible time. The Holy Emperor of the Sun said calmly. He stretched out his 2 palms and patted 2 different ancient Supreme Beings at the same time. Endless light burst out from his palms, burning fiercely and lighting up the dark sky. Then you and I will each kill a Supreme Being. The Qing Emperor chuckled. The chaotic green lotus above his head swayed, and shed billions of clear rays. Connecting the laws of heaven and earth, the divine light shot into the sky, turning into a green lotus shadow, pressing against an ancient supreme being, trying to wipe it out. Fall. In the blink of an eye, the other three supremes from the immortal mountain were entangled. On the battlefield, it became a duel between the Stone Emperor and the Void Emperor. One-on-one, you are no match, I will kill you. The great Emperor of the Void spoke very little, but there was a sense of transcendence in his calmness. He activated the great avenue of the Void and fought against the Stone Emperor alone. His own way of the Void finally blossomed without any constraints. The great Emperor of the Void's imperial laws were brilliant, shining in the world, surpassing the Stone Emperor. Roar! The Stone Emperor roared and struggled to meet the enemy. Without the other three ancient supreme beings to share the fire power with him, it was very difficult for him to face the Void Emperor alone. In the end, he could not hold on anymore and was forced to sublimate again to face the Void Emperor. But the ending was so difficult. Without any hindrance, the Void Emperor fully unleashed his combat power. The boundless way of the Void suppressed everything, and was about to destroy the Stone Emperor. The supreme blood was flying, and the Stone Emperor his bones were broken, he kept flying up, and was defeated by the great Emperor of the Void. The avenue that belonged to him kept wailing. Come help me. Otherwise, your ending will be the same as mine later. Finally, the Stone Emperor yelled at the other ancient supreme beings who were watching coldly. However, the remaining ancient supreme beings were unmoved. They were not from the immortal mountain and had no obligation to help the Stone Emperor. Moreover, the Stone Emperor and others it can greatly consume the combat power of the Void Emperor and others. After all, they are just a few remnant souls and cannot exist in the world for a long time. Fighting with the Supreme of the immortal mountain first can only mean that they are unlucky. At this time, no Supreme will choosing to help. Without the participation of other Supremes, the battle situation suddenly became clear and clear. After another difficult bloody battle, Stone Emperor finally couldn't resist, and was hit by the Flower of the Void again, and then was the great Emperor of the Void used his supreme magic power to beat his body to pieces, and every drop of flesh and blood was completely annihilated by the power of the Void, never to be recovered again. The Stone Emperor died. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, I am the big boss behind the scenes. Author, Guanyun Taoist. Chapter 183. The second ancient supreme one has fallen. The fall of the Stone Emperor made the remaining ancient supremes look solemn. After all, they are parallel existences. The first is the Lord of Reincarnation, and the second is the Stone Emperor. Whose turn will it be next? It took hundreds of thousands of years to accumulate the ancient supreme beings, but now they are withering away one after another. The power of the remnant soul will not last long, and it is expected that it will dissipate after the death of the three remaining supreme beings in the immortal mountain. Without further ado, we should set off immediately to eat and return to peak condition. The remaining 10 or so ancient supreme beings are not prepared to wait any longer. The Dozhan Holy Emperor, the Void Emperor, the Sun Holy Emperor, and the Qing Emperor have all appeared. It is expected that there will be no other changes. More than 10 an ancient supreme, glanced indifferently at the Sun Holy Emperor and others who were fighting, and chose to set off. In the process, the great Emperor of the Void, who had already killed the Stone Emperor, tried his best to hold back the two of them, but was helpless. There were too many ancient supreme beings, and he could not stop them all by himself. In the end, nearly 10 ancient supreme beings entered the universe, looking for the location of the ancient star of life, and were ready to start eating. You receive shocking points at 358-4555 from Stone Emperor. You receive shocking points at 325 1111 from Kishan Supreme. You receive from. On this ancient life star named Gushan, Qin Mu looked at the rising shock points on the system panel with a hint of satisfaction in his eyes. Now the shock points have exceeded 1.3 billion. This time it was set up as a fairy road secret realm, but a lot of shock points were obtained from these ancient supreme beings. Wait a little longer, harvest a wave of shock points, and then end it all. Qin Mu said calmly. The road to immortality opened up, and the ancient supreme beings took the bait and fought on the immortal road. Then they retreated from the immortal road and launched a dark turmoil. All of this is under Qin Mu's control and plan. Only in this way can the entire world be conquered. The universe was stirred up, earning Qin Mu a huge amount of shock points. Of course, Qin Mu's purpose was just to harvest shock points, and he did not really intend to let these ancient supreme beings blood-wash the universe. The appearance of the Void Emperor, the Fighting Saint Emperor and others, it was Qin Mu's backup plan. There are still a lot of ancient supreme beings, and Qin Mu's arrangement naturally has not stopped. In the vast universe, a figure like a demon god is crossing the universe. It is the Yin and Yang Supreme from the Sea of Samsara, looking for traces of the ancient star of life. Ha, found it? The cold laughter sounded, and the Yin Yang Supreme looked back and looked at an ancient star. It was a dark red star, very huge, and it was pregnant with billions of living beings. It was a prosperous star. Ancient star of life. Killing all the creatures on this ancient star should satisfy half of my needs. Yin Yang Supreme estimated. His longevity is now exhausted, and he was seriously injured when he was on the road to immortality. Even if he kills hundreds of millions of creatures on an ancient life star, he can only recover less than half of his injuries. And now, there are nearly 10 ancient supreme beings like the Yin Yang Supreme all over the universe. One can imagine what will happen to all the beings in the universe if no one stops them. I couldn't wait to start eating. The Yin and Yang Supreme stepped forward, displaying his boundless imperial body, and reached out his palm to grab this ancient star of life. He wanted to crush the star of life, kill all souls, and make up for his own injuries. On top of this ancient star of life, hundreds of millions of creatures, looking at the palm that covers the sky and the sun, covering the entire ancient star, are all in despair. They can't resist at all, they can't even escape, they can only wait helplessly. With this monstrous disaster coming. However, just as all living beings were desperately preparing to meet their fate, the huge palm that was slowly pressing down from the 9 heavens suddenly stopped. This kind of aura, could someone have attained enlightenment here in the past? Yin Yang Supreme murmured. When his palm pressed down, he actually felt a trace of Ji-Dao breath lingering on this ancient life star. However, Yin Yang Supreme's surprise only lasted for a short moment, and then the palm of his hand then he continued to suppress him mercilessly. No matter which extreme existence he had achieved enlightenment here in the past, everything was long gone. All the creatures on this ancient star of life would be transformed into nourishing his wounds on the immortal platform, and for the nourishment for him to prolong his life. However, just when the palm of Yin Yang Supreme continued to press down, and was about to crush this ancient star of life into pieces and completely disintegrate. Above the ancient star, a divine light suddenly rose into the sky, accompanied by with a supreme aura that made everyone in the world wail. It even directly bounced away the palm of Yin Yang Supreme. What? The Yin Yang Supreme was horrified and quickly looked in the direction of the rising aura. It was a 6-foot-long Bodhi tree, and there was an ancient futon placed under the tree. It had been in existence for an unknown period of time, and it had been staying in this life. An unknown corner of the ancient star is covered with dust. But now, this ancient Bodhi tree seems to be resurrected. The bark is cracked and branches are branching upward. The tree is full of green and crystal clear. And the energy that makes Yin and Yang Supreme the aura that shocked everyone did not come from this ancient tree, but from the futon under that tree. The supreme aura rising into the sky came from that futon. The futon is ancient, and now it is even more chaotic. As the energy rises, the nearby void is shattered, and sometimes fragments of time are even dancing there. Faintly, a figure emerges from the ancient river of time, sitting cross-legged on the futon, comprehending the world, as if enlightening. The human emperor. After seeing the figure sitting cross-legged under the Bodhi tree, Yin-Yang Supreme was startled. He recognized the identity of the other person, who was the heavenly emperor of the human race. It turned out that this was not the place where the powerful masters of the past achieved enlightenment. But it was the martial arts place of the human race's heavenly emperor millions of years ago. Fantasy, I am the big boss behind the scenes. Author, Guanyun Taoist. Chapter 184. The human emperor once attained enlightenment here. Yin-Yang Supreme murmured to himself, and a hint of retreat appeared in his heart. He just wanted to recover from his injuries and replenish his nearly exhausted lifespan, and did not want to die early like the Samsara Supreme and the Stone Emperor. There is something weird about this star, so he can just change it to another ancient star of life. Yin-Yang Supreme hesitated and did not make a decision quickly. The majesty of being the ancient Supreme seemed to prevent him from doing so. If he retreats now, wouldn't it prove that he is afraid? Moreover, it was just the place where the human celestial emperor once attained enlightenment. Even if there were some traces of the Dao left millions of years ago engraved between the heaven and the earth, it was not the reappearance of the celestial emperor after all. Moreover, he might be able to take this opportunity to observe the way of the human race's heavenly emperor, and maybe he can gain something. Yin-Yang Supreme couldn't help but feel excited, and had an urge to stay. But the next moment, he knew that he was wrong, and how wrong he was. Above the ancient stars, below the 6-foot-long Bodhi tree, the Emperor of Heaven moved. He stood up, stretched out his arms, and rode along some inexplicable trajectory, as if he was comprehending an invincible method, making the whole world tremble, and all the worlds were wailing. The Emperor of Heaven enlightened, visions abounded, all spirits knelt down and worshipped, gods and demons prostrate, and even 6 ancient universes appeared, rotating around the true body of the Emperor of Heaven, evolving all things, covering all creatures in the universe, and it was terrifying and boundless. What's even more terrifying is that the phantom of the human heavenly emperor that emerged from the futon began to become clearer and clearer as his enlightenment deepened, and his momentum became stronger and stronger, as if he was about to walk out of nothingness and live. It's like coming to this world. This kind of way. The Yin-Yang Supreme's voice was trembling. He wanted to observe the way of the Emperor of Heaven, and he might gain something. But now he knew that this was impossible. The way of the human heavenly emperor is very simple and pure. It is a majestic trend that controls all things in the world, the sun, the moon, the universe. I am invincible, only I am invincible. As the Emperor of Heaven, I shall suppress all enemies in the world. It is a majestic trend of self-confidence and invincibility in the world, no matter in ancient or modern times. From ancient times, the powerful people in the extreme Tao all had the belief that they were invincible, but no one ever regarded this as their own Tao. Invincible way. This is the way of the human emperor. It is simply impossible to imitate. If you observe it for a long time, even the Supreme Master will have self-doubt and feel ashamed. This is very dangerous. Among the ancient Supreme Beings, which one does not firmly believe that he is the strongest? If you don't even have this little confidence, how can you be worthy of being honored? I can no longer observe the strange Tao, otherwise the Tao will be damaged. Yin-Yang Supreme was so horrified that he didn't dare to continue watching. He had the urge to leave immediately. And he did indeed do so. He was preparing to leave to find food on other ancient life stars and did not dare to stay here for a long time. However, Yin-Yang Supreme, his actions were obviously too late. Under Zhonglu Bodhi, Emperor Yetian was still enlightening, as if he was deducing a kind of unparalleled boxing technique. I am invincible and can swallow hundreds of millions of miles. Then, he actually recovered and slowly open your eyes, the power of the Emperor of Heaven is unparalleled, he wakes up completely and comes to this world. Dark turmoil. Under the Bodhi tree, the Emperor of Heaven spoke to himself and looked at the Yin and Yang Supreme. Locked by the Heavenly Emperor's gaze, the Yin Yang Supreme at this moment actually had the illusion that his whole body, from his soul to his body, was about to be frozen. He roared, evolving the Yin Yang Supreme technique, and his right eye became dark, as if he wanted to swallow up the universe, accommodate everything in the world, and obliterate everything. The left pupil bloomed with endless light, as if an ancient world was born, and light dominated everything. The endless darkness and light rotated in the eyes of Yin Yang Supreme, and finally turned into a round Tai Chi diagram, covering the universe, and hitting this ancient star of life. The Yin Yang Supreme strikes first and uses the unparalleled Supreme technique to wipe out everything on this ancient star, including Emperor Ye Tian. The Yin Yang Supreme's actions alarmed the other ancient Supremes in the universe, making all of them look strange. They could feel that Yin Yang Supreme was taking action with all his strength, as if he had encountered an unimaginable enemy and was fighting desperately against it. However, who in the universe today would be the enemy of Yin and Yang Supreme? Who can be his enemy? But the next moment, these Supreme beings knew everything. Because of a grand, supreme, and overwhelming invincible fighting spirit, it soared into the sky from the position of the Supreme Yin and Yang and filled the entire universe. Dark turmoil. As the Emperor of Heaven, I shall suppress all enemies in the world. Above the ancient stars, Emperor Ye Tian came to dominate the world. He simply punched the Supreme Yin and Yang with one punch. It was the fist of the Emperor of Heaven that had evolved to the extreme. Endless lines intertwined, visions appeared in the void, and ancient gods and demons roared, 3,000 avenues boiled, and with one punch, they condensed into a human-shaped shadow, soared into the sky, and rushed towards Yin Yang Supreme. That human-shaped shadow was a kind of supreme avenue, transformed by Emperor Ye Tian himself invincible mark. He tears everything apart, destroys everything, shakes the past, present, and future. The Yin-Yang Taiji diagram that the Yin-Yang Supreme evolved to cover the universe was not enough to see, and was directly penetrated by the phantom of the human-shaped emperor. Then, the human-shaped light and shadow went unabated, it rushed straight towards the Yin-Yang Supreme. With his roar, it hit his body hard. Blood splashed 30,000 feet. The Yin-Yang Supreme's body was directly exploded. Blood rain poured down in the universe. The boundless Emperor's blood is being sprayed, and every drop of blood contains the invincible Heavenly Emperor's fist intention, which is wiping out the body and soul of Yin Yang Supreme. Yin Yang Supreme roars and tries his best to resist, but he can't resist the extremely grand fist intention at all. That is the great way of the Emperor of Heaven. It suppresses everything and obliterates everything. It is simply not something he can resist. Boom. In the end, all the marks belonging to the Yin and Yang Supreme were erased, and his body and soul were burned to ashes, completely erased from this universe. This scene shocked the entire universe and made the entire universe fall into silence. Emperor Ye Tian of the human race came and killed an ancient supreme being with one punch. Throughout the ages, no one can compete with it. Fantasy, I am the big boss behind the scenes. Author, Guanyun Taoist. Chapter 185. The human heavenly emperor came to the dust and killed the ancient supreme being with one punch. The power of the Emperor of Heaven is really hard to fathom. No wonder even the ancient emperor of the Jideo bowed his head in front of the human Ye Tian. Even the powerful Jideo would bow to this kind of power. In the vast universe, all souls are terrified. The mighty power of the Emperor's fist permeates the entire universe, making all living beings know the way of the Emperor of Heaven. I only respect the invincibility of the world, and only respect my own invincibility. Regardless of your thousands of dangers and difficulties, I will destroy it with force. I am the Emperor of Heaven, and I will suppress all enemies in the world. This is an invincible self-confidence, and it is also a proof of extreme strength and power. Before, although all living beings had witnessed that year from the secret realm created by Qin Mu, Emperor Ye Tian suppressed the image of an ancient Jida emperor unable to raise his head. But after all, it was just a scene that happened millions of years ago. Even if it was real, there was still a sense of alienation, which was far inferior to witnessing the arrival of the Emperor of Heaven now. Dust, the shock of killing the ancient Supreme Being with one punch. Yin-Yang Supreme is dead. In the vast universe, there was a Supreme Being who sighed lightly, looked at the figure of the Emperor of Heaven that shone brightly for eternity, and said indifferently, "Everyone, the human celestial emperor has also appeared. If we don't join forces, I'm afraid it will be our turn next." The road to becoming an immortal appears, and there are many changes. Well, it was originally prepared for the human empress, but now it seems that it can only be used on the human emperor. It's a pity that it's just a soul mark from millions of years ago. It doesn't have the blood of the Emperor of Heaven. After suppressing it, not much can be gained. That's enough. If you analyze his ways and confirm your own ways, you might gain more. In the big universe, the cold words of several ancient supreme beings came. They all came from the same ancient restricted area, the immortal tomb. Now seeing the human race's heavenly emperor born, although they were surprised, they were not too panicked. Moreover, these ancient supremes, crossed the entire universe at the first time, gathered together, and seemed to be waiting for Emperor Ye Tian to fall into the trap. Listening to the cold words of these ancient supremes, all the spirits in the universe were filled with worries. It seemed that, these ancient supreme beings still have back UPS, and they were originally prepared for the ruthless empress, but now that the ruthless empress has not left the restricted area, the Emperor of Heaven appears. If the Emperor wants to cause trouble for them, he will use this backup force against the human race. On the Emperor of Heaven. To be called a backhand by several ancient supremes, it must be very extraordinary and a killer weapon. In this case, will the human Ye Tian choose to be his enemy? Or choose to attack other ancient people? Supreme. Several ancient supremes set up a killing trap, waiting for the Emperor of Heaven to fall into the trap. Logically speaking, at this time, they should avoid their sharp edges and kill other ancient supremes. But Emperor Ye Tian's actions were beyond everyone's expectations. He, without dodging or avoiding, he left the ancient star of life and took one step forward. The stars moved, the sun and the moon rotated, and he came directly in front of the ancient supreme beings in the Xianling restricted area. And the Emperor of Heaven's actions seemed to be in front of those ancient supreme beings. Expected. The Tao of invincibility means that I am invincible and can move forward bravely. If he chooses to retreat, how can he be called the Emperor of Heaven? An ancient supreme sneered, seeming to have already understood what Emperor Ye Tian was thinking. "Human Emperor, you are too trusting." Another ancient supreme leader said indifferently. "You are proud enough to be able to get us to join forces, Emperor of the human race." An old Taoist wearing an ancient Taoist robe, with grey hair and a purple gold crown on his head, sat cross-legged on an ancient chariot, with a Jidao divine sword across his knees, and said in a cold voice, "Seal the heavenly locking emperor's formation and send the human emperor on his way. He is the immortal lord, the lord of the immortal tomb, and the initiator of this great formation." Boom, as soon as Chang Shentian's unfinished speaking, the other four ancient supremes around him moved. Each of the ancient supreme beings shocked all the realms and fully demonstrated their own great ways. Afterwards, the avenues of the Supreme Masters collided and turned into a misty world, shrouding Emperor Ye Tian within it. This is a strange world, with mountains of corpses and seas of blood. The terrifying scene of the fallen immortals emerges. Murderous intent is piercing the bones. The aura of tragedy is overwhelming. The heaven and earth are filled with a rich smell of blood. The murderous intent is so overwhelming that it can freeze people's souls. In this misty ancient world, even the most powerful ones will be suppressed, their own moral deeds will not show up, and their combat power will be greatly reduced. This is the sealing heaven locking emperor formation. It is arranged by 5 supreme beings. It encompasses all the worlds and suppresses all beings in the formation. Even if the real ancient emperor of the extreme way enters the formation, his strength will be greatly suppressed. Drink hate. Chaos energy was misty, and the laws of the great Dao emerged, covering the entire world and the figures of the 5 ancient supreme beings, including the immortal Lord. The 4 ancient supreme beings each occupy a corner of the world, and the immortal Lord is in the center, overlooking all directions. The Emperor of Heaven is too trusting, and the 5 ancient supremes have laid out a killing plan, just waiting for the Emperor of Heaven to enter the urn. This kind of peerless killing formation could probably wipe out even the true Emperor of the Supreme Dao. The human Emperor is in danger. Can the Emperor of Heaven stop it? All spirits are worried, wondering whether the Emperor of Heaven can stop the joint efforts of the 5 ancient supreme beings, including the Changshen Tianzun, to break this unsolvable killing situation. Chaos energy flows, covering everything, and nothing can be seen. Only the Supreme Being, the cold words are ringing out. Kill and send the Emperor of Heaven on his way. The formation shook violently, thousands of tremors, and endless chaotic light turned into thousands of bloody chaotic sword lights, slashing towards the heavenly Emperor, drowning everything. The 5 gods gathered together, set up a shocking formation, and besieged the human heavenly Emperor. It's a killer match. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, I am the big boss behind the scenes. Author, Guanyun Taoist. Chapter 186. However, in the face of all this, the Emperor's expression was always very calm. He stepped into the shocking killing formation set up by the 5 ancient supreme beings, and witnessed the formation of the shocking killing formation with his own eyes, but did not take advantage of this opportunity to take action. It felt as if there was no need at all. In the eyes of Emperor Yetiandi, the actions of the 5 ancient supreme beings were nothing more than futile struggles and no threat at all. He himself has reached the realm of true invincibility, able to look down upon everything. He has never paid attention to any big formations or killing situations. The sealing heaven locking Emperor formation is somewhat interesting, but it's not enough, it's too far. When the billions of bloody chaotic sword lights were coming, the Emperor of Heaven finally moved. He stretched out a palm and pressed in the direction of the billions of bloody chaotic sword lights. He covered the sky with his big hand and shattered everything. Boom! With a loud explosion, the sky shattered, and the huge palm was like no other, destroying everything with a devastating effect. After those chaotic sword lights struck the giant palm, they exploded one after another and turned into a rain of blood pouring down. This was a palm that made everyone tremble in ancient and modern times. It penetrated the sky and reversed the world. Even the entire sealing heaven and Emperor locking formation was trembling, and a hole was almost blasted out by the palm. What a powerful force! Even the ancient supreme beings who presided over the arrangement of this shocking killing formation couldn't help but be frightened. The power of the Emperor of Heaven was too strong. This large formation was equivalent to the combined strength of the 5 of them. But now, with one palm of the Emperor's hand, he almost killed the great formation was blasted away with such power that it was simply hard to fathom. Don't hesitate any longer, use your strongest techniques to kill the Emperor of Heaven, and don't give him any chance. The immortal heavenly Lord roared, knowing that he could not go on like this. If the heavenly Emperor is given a chance to break them one by one, the formation will collapse, and no one will be able to escape by then. The only way now is for the 5 supreme beings to fully sublimate and fight. The strongest blow, kill the Emperor of Heaven together, without giving any chance to the Emperor of Humanity. Okay, that's the ultimate sublimation. To the utmost sublimation, send the Emperor of Heaven on his way. One blow to seal the deal and end it all. The other four ancient supremes no longer hesitated, and opened their own shackles of the Dao. They no longer controlled, allowed the Dao fruit to rise, and came to that supreme realm again. Boom! The universe is trembling, and all the realms are roaring. At this moment, five ancient supreme beings have reached their ultimate sublimation and returned to the realm of the Supreme Emperor. The aura of the Imperial Dao has swept through the ages and stirred up the universe, causing terror to the extreme. Eternal Yuyufari Pendant. An ancient supreme roared, holding an imperial weapon, and slashed out the most powerful sword at the Emperor of Heaven. Brush. The sword shines in the world, with peerless sharpness, unleashing the immortal killing intent of this ancient supreme, traversing the eternal universe. There are also holy streaks. And brilliant rays of light dance around this sword light, all of them are as bright as the stars, with immortal energy flowing. The truth separates the past from the present. Another supreme shouted loudly, speaking the Dharma, spanning the past and present. Only his Tao is blooming, turning into immortal rays of light, striking towards the Emperor of Heaven. Every ray of light is like a brilliant star, overwhelming the sky, suppressing everything. This is a method that can be called heaven-defying, using the supreme way to turn into billions of stars, evolve the real universe, and kill the enemy. Each of the ancient supremes after their ultimate sublimation, slashed out his strongest blow, wanting to determine the outcome in an instant and kill the human celestial emperor. In the end, the immortal emperor also took action. He stood up and waved the immortal sword in his hand. The sword sweeps the world. The Changsheng Tianzun roared, resounding through the sky, the chaotic energy shook, the Changsheng sword revived, swept forward, slashed forward, and directly took the Emperor of Heaven. When the sword came out, the universe and the stars changed color, and the void along the way was shattered, as if it was creating the world. The grandeur and majesty reached the extreme. The five supreme beings gathered together, and the vast laws of the Emperor gathered here. Just the aftermath of the attacks of these five supreme beings seemed to completely wipe this place out of the universe. As for that, the attack struck by the five of them was so powerful that it was unparalleled. I am afraid that even if any of the ancient emperors of the ancient and modern times were allowed to come here, they would still be in despair and unable to withstand these five extremely sublimated ancient emperors. The Supremes joined forces to strike. However, in the face of all this, the Emperor remained calm. You still don't understand. The Emperor of Heaven spoke, and the sound filled the world. In the past, I killed countless people like you, and even bulldozed more than one of the so-called restricted areas of life. Everything now is just a repeat of the past. Do you really think you can kill me if you work together? Not enough. As the Emperor of Heaven, I shall suppress all enemies in the world. The Emperor of Heaven spoke, his arrogance reached the extreme, and the whole universe roared with it. Countless monks trembled and their blood boiled when they heard these words. This is the self-confidence of the Emperor of Heaven, standing proudly, looking down at the world, like a godless lord, overlooking the boundless earth, with supreme grace. He took action in the formation, waved the divine fist of the Emperor of Heaven, and blasted out with one punch. The world was torn apart, and the entire formation was shaking, as if it was about to be exploded at any time. Emperor Yetian formed seals with his hands, exerting the power of the Great Avenue. Endless runes appear, stirring up the past and present, penetrating thousands of ways, and carrying indescribable magic power. He is forming seals to merge all the runes into one, and then shoot out billions of immortal lights. That it is the supreme Dao that belongs to the Emperor of Heaven, covering all eternity. It collided with the joint attack of the five supreme beings. The Dao light weighed billions of times and created a force that caused the collapse of the universe. And the result of the collision was even more shocking. Shocking. With 1 against 5, Emperor Yetian not only defeated the joint attack of the 5 Supremes, but also shook the formation, beating the 5 Supremes until they vomited blood, and the formation was also shattered. It is difficult to describe the demeanor of the Emperor at this moment. He waving the Emperor's fist, his black hair was flying, and his eyes were full of invincible confidence. Nothing could stop him. Even the 5 ancient Supremes joining forces were not enough. At this moment, Emperor Yetian defeated 1 against 5, showing his unparalleled style. Fantasy, I am the big boss behind the scenes. Author, Guanyun Taoist. Chapter 187. The power of the Heavenly Emperor shook the world, shaking the heaven-sealing Emperor formation to the point of collapse. The 5 immortals were shaking and vomiting blood. This can't help but make Chang Shengtianzun and others horrified. This heaven-sealing Emperor formation was originally the result of countless years of hard work by the 5 supreme beings from the immortal tomb. The power is so infinite that it can even kill the ancient Emperor of the Great Dao in his peak state. It was originally prepared for the peerless enemies that may be encountered on the road to becoming an immortal, but now it is used to fight against the divine will of the Emperor of Heaven. What's even more terrifying is that they can't defeat him. You must know that this is a grand formation set up by all 5 supreme beings after they have been fully sublimated. It can be said that it has reached its most perfect state. But now, what they faced was just a wisp of divine will from the Emperor of Heaven, and they were beaten so embarrassingly. If the real human heavenly Emperor were here, what kind of strength would he have? Kill! Emperor Yetian scolded, shaking the world. He waved his imperial fist and struck in all directions, destroying everything in the formation. Then he shot an invincible Emperor's mark, directly penetrated the formation and killed him out. Rushed out. An ancient supreme being was horrified. The next moment, he felt a boundless fighting spirit and murderous intention, rushing into the sky. Boom! Emperor Yetian struck with a punch, and the ancient supreme man flew backwards, covered in blood, which spilled down and destroyed a star field. The body of this ancient supreme being was also beaten to tatters and was almost exploded. If he hadn't reached his ultimate sublimation in time, he might have followed in the footsteps of the Yin-Yang Supreme and been killed by the Emperor of Heaven with one punch. But now, his results are no better. One punch from the Emperor of Heaven directly killed half of his life, and then the second punch came in mercilessly, not giving the Ancient Supreme a chance to breathe. This time he directly exploded him. Boom! Rain of blood filled the sky, ghosts cried and gods howled, another Ancient Supreme fell, and the vision shocked the world. Good. The power of the human heavenly Emperor is truly unstoppable. O Supreme Emperor of Heaven! His divine power is unparalleled, killing 2 ancient supreme beings one after another is like a myth. Thinking back to those days, when the Emperor of Heaven ruled the world, what would it be like? All the geniuses and geniuses are in despair, and even the restricted areas must lie dormant. Billions of people are extremely excited. Emperor Yetian is too strong. Even the ancient supreme being who has been fully sublimated is not his enemy. He will be crushed and killed directly. This can't help but make the remaining 4 supreme beings heartbroken. Shocked. An ancient supreme has fallen first, and they will be next. Will the human heavenly emperor let them go? Obviously impossible. The only chance now is to do everything possible to see if he can wipe out this ray of divine thought from the heavenly emperor. Drop it? After all, it is just a ray of spiritual thought and cannot last long in the world. This is their only hope. The emperor rules the world. Another ancient supreme being roared and came to kill. He was majestic and tall, with golden hair dancing wildly, and golden light all over his body, lighting up the universe with incomparable brilliance. He was the golden-winged Pen Emperor, who once ruled the universe in the past and was invincible. Over the years, no one in the world can be his enemy. But now, he is trying his best to strike the strongest blow of Ji Dao, trying to resist the human emperor. Endless runes appear from nothingness, rearranged and combined, forming a kind of imperial way. This is the way belonging to Emperor Peng, which can ban everything and suppress everything. In vain, useless. Emperor Yetian said calmly to himself. He did not take Emperor Peng into consideration at all. He was already invincible in his heart and eyes. He struck out with one palm, covering the universe, recreating the scene of covering the sky with one hand that day. He pressed down on Emperor Peng's head and slapped him in. In the endless sea of chaos, the emperor's body exploded, and several star fields were destroyed in the process. Next, Emperor Yetian moved forward, slapped Emperor Fei Peng, and then aimed at the immortal lord, punching him. The starry sky for billions of miles was shattered, and his invincible fist shook the world. Roar! The eyes of the immortal lord were about to burst, and he felt a sense of impending disaster. He hurriedly waved the eternal life sword in his hand, bursting out with unparalleled power, so sharp that it was dazzling and terrifying to the extreme. In the sky, the galaxies collapsed, and the killing light shook the world. However, Chang Shengtianzun's unstoppable attack was not enough to catch up with Emperor Yetianzun's punch, and was directly destroyed. The emperor's fist was invincible, bombarding Chang Shengtianzun, and directly blasted him away. However, Chang Shengtianzun was worthy of his honor. He is the lord of the immortal tomb, with blood splashing as bright as red clouds, but there are also chains of order like phoenix clouds running through the flesh and blood, reuniting the broken flesh and blood in the moment before his body is about to explode. To condense the emperor's body. This is a supreme secret technique with unparalleled recovery power. It can be said to be the flesh and white bones of life and death. It can return to one's own body in an instant and is called invincible. However, in front of the Emperor of Heaven, the recovery power is unparalleled. It's just as long as he can hold on for a moment. The Emperor of Heaven swings his fists, and each punch shakes the past and the present, possessing the power to suppress the universe forever. After only 2 blows, the immortal emperor was no longer able to condense his body, and the emperor's body was exploded, and then was killed by that. This kind of supreme fist power was wiped out. He killed 3 ancient supreme beings one after another, but Emperor Yetian became more and more courageous as he fought. His body was like an oven, his breath was overwhelming, and the sound of chanting was constantly ringing in his body, and the runes were all over the sky, sacred and brilliant, majestic and magnificent, suppressing the 10 directions. The remaining 2 ancient supremes finally got scared. The formation was broken, and the 3 ancient supremes were killed. Everything happened in an instant. How can we fight this? The power of the human race's heavenly emperor. Simply invincible. The remaining 2 ancient supreme beings were timid and wanted to escape, but how could Emperor Yetian give them this chance? The divine fist of the Emperor of Heaven was unparalleled, and after only 3 or 2 blows, these 2 ancient supremes fell one after another. This is what Ling wanted, was a scene that shocked the spirit and held its breath. The 5 supreme ones from the Xianling Forbidden Zone withered one after another and were killed by the Emperor of Heaven. The 5 supreme ones can be regarded as the entire power in the Xianling Forbidden Zone. It is equivalent to Emperor Yetiandi alone. His hands flattened a restricted area of life. Fantasy, I am the big boss behind the scenes. Author, Guanyun Taoist. Chapter 188. The universe was silent, and all spirits were shocked to the extreme. Emperor Yetian was invincible, and he successively killed the 5 ancient supreme beings who came out of the Xianling restricted area. He was so powerful that his peerless style was deeply engraved in the minds of all living beings in the universe. This is just a wisp of divine thought from the human celestial emperor. If his true form comes, how magnificent will he be? Some living beings couldn't help but sigh. The power of the Emperor of Heaven has exceeded the limit that all living beings can imagine. However, at this moment, all living beings can't help but think of another problem. Even with the strength of the Emperor of Heaven of the human race, when talking about the dark corner of millions of years ago, his expression was extremely solemn. How terrifying should the so-called darkness be? After killing 5 ancient supreme beings in succession, Emperor Yetian looked back and stared into the universe. Then his figure gradually dissipated and became invisible. He did not continue. The reason for chasing down the remaining ancient supreme beings is not because of lack of strength, but because at this moment, he is just a ray of spiritual thought left by his true body. When the time comes, it will dissipate and cannot last forever in the world. Continuously kill the 5 supreme beings are already the limit of what this ray of Emperor Yetian's spiritual thoughts can achieve in a limited time. In the direction of the 5 domains, Emperor Yetian killed the 5 supreme beings who came out of the immortal tomb, almost bulldozing this restricted area. And it belongs to the void. The battle between the great emperor and the Sun Holy Emperor, Qing Emperor and others is about to come to an end. Previously, the Void Emperor killed the Stone Emperor and held back the 2 ancient supreme beings, while the Sun Holy Emperor held back the other 2 ancient supreme beings. Supreme, the Azure Emperor fights alone against an ancient supreme being. The Void Emperor, the Azure Emperor, and the Holy Emperor of the Sun. They were all truly supreme beings millions of years ago. Now, even with 3 against 5, they still fight with supreme grace. The Holy Emperor of the Sun, even if we are 1 against 2, we are still invincible. When the Holy Fist of the Sun is struck, I am invincible. With 1 punch, it is like blasting out a burning ancient universe, making the brilliant galaxies eclipse, and making even the ancient supreme beings fearful. And the Qing Emperor is also of supreme elegance. Fighting alone against an ancient supreme being, he keeps suppressing and beating the opponent. Even if the opponent is extremely sublimated, it is useless. A chaotic green lotus sways, shattering half of the starry sky, and the chaotic energy is misty. The ancient supreme being was beaten back continuously, and the boundless emperor's body was exploded 3 times in succession, and he was immediately on the verge of death. And the Void Emperor, who had fiercely fought against the Stone Emperor before, then fought against the 5 supreme beings alone, then killed the Stone Emperor, and then fought with the 2. The ancient supreme beings fought with each other, and their own combat power was greatly depleted, so now they are fighting against each other alone, and the battle situation seems to be a bit stalemate. However, the spread of the Void Avenue also blocked the 2 ancient supreme beings, without giving the other party any chance to escape. With the great Emperor of the Void and others were facing the enemy's ancient supreme being, roaring unwillingly and angrily. They felt that their luck was extremely bad. First, the immortal road was opened, but they failed to break into the immortal road, and then when they were about to launch a dark turmoil, something happened again. The emperors and emperors from millions of years ago appeared, not only blocking their steps, but also turning against the guests. They became extremely powerful and wanted to kill them. For hundreds of thousands of years, these ancient supreme beings have been the true masters of the world. Even if the ancient emperor of Jidao came to this world, he would not dare to provoke them easily. But now, the glory belonging to the ancient supreme has completely dissipated. They are being suppressed and beaten, and there is a risk of falling at any time. Boom! The sky was filled with blood rain, and the ancient supreme being who was against the Qing Emperor was finally defeated. The Qing Emperor's punch exploded the Emperor's body again. The boundless blood of the Emperor was poured out, and he fell completely. I'm here to help you. The Qing Emperor wants to join the battle and help the Void Emperor. The human Emperor is in good condition. You can help him deal with the 2 Supremes first. I alone will be enough. The great Emperor of the Void said silently, signaling the Qing Emperor to help the Sun Holy Emperor first and solve the problem of the 2 Supreme Beings in the shortest possible time. Good. Qing Emperor took a deep look at Emperor Void and no longer hesitated to help the Holy Emperor of the Sun and fight fiercely with the 2 ancient Supremes. He knew that what Emperor Void said was right. The best choice at the moment is undoubtedly to help those who are in better condition. The good Sun Holy Emperor will now deal with the two ancient supremes, and then free up his hands to deal with the remaining two, instead of helping the Void Emperor. Kill the Void first. Don't let them succeed. The two ancient supreme beings who were fighting against the Holy Emperor of the Sun, their pressure increased greatly after Qing Emperor joined the battle circle, and they roared angrily. And the two ancient supreme beings who were fighting against the Emperor of the Void also knew the current situation, and they couldn't help it. If you dare to neglect, the supreme technique will come out, hoping to kill the Void Emperor in the shortest possible time. In the previous battle, Void has consumed too much power. He will be exhausted. Kill him. A supreme being said cruelly. A person who was already dead, and now that he is resurrected, is he still afraid of dying again? I am about to run out of strength, so I will use my blood and my bones to put an end to all this. Facing the crazy attacks of the two ancient supremes, the Void Emperor seemed very calm. He looked back and looked at the vast world again, looking at the world he had protected and fought. Then, the Void Emperor's body began to glow, with fairy light. It weighs billions, the flesh and blood exploded, the Emperor's blood swayed, and bright and crystal bones flew out of the body, turning into eternal fairy lights and flying towards the two ancient supreme beings in front of them. Ancestor! Don't want! The great Emperor of the Void! At this moment, all the G-clan monks screamed, their hearts filled with endless pain. They knew that the great Emperor of the Void was fighting with his life at this moment, burning his own flesh and blood, burning his own bones, and striking the most powerful blow. The two ancient supreme beings are on the road together. Void, you dare! Is it worth it for these ants? The two ancient supreme beings who were enemies of the Void Emperor roared in horror. The Emperor's blood and bones flew like fairy light, covering the Void Avenue. It was simply the most terrifying murder weapon in the world, even more powerful than a supreme being. The Taoist divine soldiers were even more terrifying. When they hit these ancient supreme beings, blood kept splattering. Boom! The endless fairy light drowned everything. The great Emperor of the Void sacrificed his life and turned this place into the most terrifying place of death. The flying fairy lights were dancing wildly and all kinds of laws were shaking. Only the roars of the two supreme beings were heard continuously, full of anger and despair. Eventually, everything calmed down. The Void Emperor disappeared, and there was no trace of the two ancient supreme beings here. They had been beaten into ashes by the Emperor's magic that the Void Emperor sacrificed their lives to, and were taken on the road by the Void Emperor. Killed the Stone Emperor, fought fiercely with 5 ancient supreme beings, and later killed 2 of them alone. The name of the Void moves time, and the power of the Void shocks the ages. Even compared with the human Heavenly Emperor, the majesty and glory of the Void Emperor have never been weaker by half. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, I am the big boss behind the scenes. Author, Guanyun Taoist. Chapter 189. O Supreme Emperor of the Void, have a safe journey. The great Emperor of the Void has sacrificed too much for the human race. Even if he died, he would continue to fight and shed every last drop of his battle blood. Billions of people are in mourning. The great Emperor of the Void was so miserable that he fought alone in all directions to suppress all kinds of dark turmoil during his lifetime. Even after death, he dragged the 2 ancient supreme beings on the road. But now, millions of years later, darkness has returned to the world. The great Emperor of the Void has returned to the world with his undying obsession. He has given up his body and sacrificed his life. He has also killed several supreme beings one after another, wiping out the last traces of his existence in the world. But no matter what, the achievements of the great Emperor of the Void will forever be engraved in the hearts of the current generation, and even after the passage of time, they will not fade at all. Fellow deist Void takes the lead, and we cannot lose our prestige. The avenues of the Green Emperor and the Sun Saint Emperor unfolded, killing them to the point of madness. The chaotic Green Lotus shook, and the power of the Red Sun was mighty. After only a moment of fierce fighting, these two ancient supreme beings were killed. It's a pity that I don't have much time, otherwise I would be able to calm this chaos for all sentient beings. King D sighed. It's a pity that she is not here, otherwise we can leave in peace. The Sun Holy Emperor looked towards the direction of the ancient restricted area and sighed. Like the Qing Emperor, he has not been around for long. It is no longer possible to continue to kill those ancient supreme beings all over the universe. If the Empress were born, she would definitely be able to quell the chaos. But at the moment, the Empress is in deep sleep and is unaware of everything in the outside world. Naturally, it is impossible to quell the chaos. No matter what the outcome is, doing our best is enough. The Holy Emperor of the Sun said calmly. He had just fought with several ancient supreme beings one after another. He was also injured, and the Taoism was about to be wiped out, and he was about to leave this world. But now he still wants to go out to fight to stop those who enter the universe. The Ancient Supreme. There is not enough time, and I am afraid that time has already come before we can fight those ancient supreme beings. The Qing Emperor shook his head, and his body had begun to become weak. The aura of the Sun Holy Emperor was also fading and dissipating. After all, it was not the real Qing Emperor or the Sun Holy Emperor who came to this world and could fight for so long and kill 4 people. A supreme being is already the limit of what they can achieve. Seeing the figures of Qing Emperor and Sun Holy Emperor gradually dissipating, Wan Ling couldn't help but feel a sinking feeling in his heart. 15 ancient supreme beings were born, and Emperor Ye Tian killed 5 of them. The Fighting Saint Emperor, Qing Emperor, Sun Saint Emperor, and Void Emperor killed 8 of them. But now, there are still 2 ancient supreme beings who have retreated from the road of becoming immortals alive. The 2 ancient supreme beings seem to be the same as compared with the beginning. The situation has been much better. But no one can stop them at this moment. Emperor Ye Tian and others have left. The remaining 2 ancient supremes, no one can stop them anymore. In the universe, there is still blood will flow into a river. It is still difficult to change the final dark ending. However, when the hearts of all living beings are panicked and extremely heavy, an indescribable and unimaginable breath rises from the depths of the universe. It is a kind of the truly supreme aura is even higher than the Ji-Dao, and the ancient supreme beings are not qualified to compare with it. It even faintly surpasses the human race emperor who just appeared in the world. And with this aura, there is also an ancient supreme being. The roar. Who is it? All souls were shocked and cast their gaze into the depths of the cosmic star sea. Although they could not see what was happening there, they could feel the terrifying aura that seemed to destroy the world. In the big universe, there is a star field. Qin Mu has been wandering around this ancient planet with his little girl. But his attention has been paying attention to every move in the universe. There are only 2 ancient supreme beings left. After the Emperor of the Void and others joined forces to kill several supreme beings in the direction of the 5 major domains, Qin Mu said calmly. He knew that it was time to end the game he had set up this time. And just when Qin Mu was about to let it all come to an end. When the curtain fell, the remaining 2 ancient supreme beings, by coincidence, all came to the star field where Gushan Guxing was. And it looked like their destination was none other than Gushan Guxing. The supreme auras suddenly emerged, and the majestic and boundless supreme Dharma body appeared, each occupying half of the area of Gushan ancient star. It can be seen that these 2 ancient supremes have already made a good division. Each of them harvests half of the creatures on this ancient planet of life. It's really hard to find anything without wearing iron shoes, and it takes no effort at all to get it. Qin Mu couldn't help but smile and shake his head. He was about to go find these 2 people. Unexpectedly, the other party came to his door himself. Quickly harvest the creatures here to replenish your longevity, and then return to the restricted area. Don't stay any longer. Good. The two ancient supremes talked in a low voice. The 13 ancient supremes fell one after another. They did not die in battle on the road to immortality, but died in the hands of emperors and emperors millions of years ago. This really shocked them. I feel that I cannot stay in this world for long, and I must hide and hibernate as soon as possible. However, before these two ancient supremes can take action to enjoy this gluttonous feast. Above the ancient star, a terrifying aura that shakes the sky and the earth emerges. Above the 9 heavens, a big hand slowly emerged, surrounded by endless chaotic energy, and grabbed directly in the direction of the two ancient supreme beings. The big hand was majestic, with a galaxy surrounding it, and the aura contained in it made the stars in the universe. I want to be destroyed by it. It is a kind of extremely terrifying fluctuation, which even makes the ancient supreme heart tremble and the body trembles involuntarily. It's him. Lord of Heaven. The two ancient supreme beings screamed and discovered the source of everything. Above Gush, an ancient star, a peerless figure in white was looking at them silently. Although his whole body was shrouded in endless fairy light, his face could not be seen clearly. But that kind of aura was very familiar to these two ancient supreme beings. It was the Lord of Heaven who suddenly appeared that day and suppressed the ancient supreme being with a palm. At this moment, the opponent's attack seemed to be even more terrifying than the last time. Because, these two ancient supreme beings felt the threat of death. Run. The two supreme beings did not dare to hesitate and escaped across the universe, trying to leave here. However, their fate was decided the moment Mu took action. The big hand covering the galaxy stretched across the universe, tearing apart Tianyu, flatten the sea of stars, and capture the two ancient supreme beings. That kind of supreme power, as if the universe will be destroyed. Boom. Chaos covered the sky with its big hand, and quickly locked onto the two ancient supreme beings. When its palm fell, all the fluctuations and roars fell silent. The two ancient supreme beings didn't even have time to scream, before all traces were wiped out by this giant palm of chaos. Flesh, and soul were completely wiped out and disappeared from the universe forever. The Lord of Heaven reappears, destroying two statues with one palm, and completely quelling the dark turmoil. Since then, all 15 ancient supreme beings have been destroyed, and there is no longer a supreme being in the universe who wants to initiate dark turmoil, and the peace and tranquility of the past has been restored. Fantasy, I am the big boss behind the scenes. Author, Guanyun Taoist. Chapter 190. The Lord of Heaven reappears, his hand covering the sky spreads across the universe, the stars turn into dust, and the Supreme falls. All this happened so suddenly, and before all sentient beings could even figure out what happened, the two ancient Supreme beings died. However, all the spirits in the universe found the answer from the roars of the two ancient Supreme beings before they died. It is the Lord of Heaven who is taking action. Destroyed the two ancient supreme beings and completely ended the dark turmoil sweeping the entire universe. Is this the true power of the Lord of Heaven? In the universe, there was a quasi-emperor who was lucky enough to escape, and said to himself in a trembling voice. He fled to the ancient planet Gushan to avoid the dark turmoil, so he was lucky enough to witness everything that just happened. What kind of power is that? The ancient supreme being who was unparalleled in power and could be called the ruler of the world was as fragile as a child in front of the Lord of Heaven. He was annihilated into ashes with a single palm and died silently. This gap is so huge that it is so despairing. Before, there were still beings who were comparing the combat power between the Lord of Heaven and the human emperor. Most people believed that the Lord of Heaven was probably not as good as the human emperor. After all, in the historical scrolls of the past, Emperor Yetian could command a person with just one palm. The ancient emperor of the Jidao could not raise his head. Considering his true combat power, it would not be difficult to destroy the supreme being by raising his palm. But the Lord of Heaven, with one palm strike, only injured an ancient supreme, but did not kill him. From this point of view, the combat power of the Lord of Heaven seems to be inferior to that of the human Yetiendi. But now, the creatures who hold this view realize how wrong they are. The Lord of Heaven also has the means and ability to obliterate the Supreme. At the click of a finger it was the death of two ancient Supreme Beings. Before, they only severely injured the Supreme Being of the Immortal Mountain, but did not kill him. Now it seems that it was not due to lack of ability, but simply because they simply did not use too much effort and felt that everything was unnecessary. Because in ancient times I am afraid that existences at the level of the Supreme have long been ignored. The power of the Supreme has been completely wiped out from the universe. In addition to the restricted areas, there are still several Supremes who have never been born and are still lingering in the universe. There is no trace of any ancient Supreme Being. This dark turmoil that spread to the heavens and the entire universe has finally been completely put down. As the main force in putting down this dark turmoil, those emperors and emperors from millions of years ago, and have been devoutly worshipped and praised by all the beings in the universe. Temples of the Void Emperor, the Sun Emperor and others have been erected in the human world. Day and night, there are living beings kowtow and worship, in gratitude for their supreme contributions to all living beings. Even the ancient tribes silently erected the temple of Dojan Holy Emperor to pray and worship. The great Emperor of the Void, who was no weaker than others in his life and suppressed the turmoil in the 8 wastelands. The ancestor of the human race and the ancient Emperor of the Sun, who created the mother scripture of the human race. The Yeshan Emperor, who looks around and suppresses all enemies in the world. The Qing Emperor, who has 9 lotus petals supporting the heaven and earth, and 1 lotus in the eternal blue sky. There is also the Dojan Holy Emperor, who wants to transform into a war immortal in the world. An emperor who respects millions of years ago. The emperor and the emperor appeared in this dark turmoil that spread across the heavens, shocking the ages. Their achievements and their legends will be forever engraved in the hearts of all souls and recorded in history forever. 1.8 billion shock points. On a certain ancient life star, Qin Mu looked at the data on the system panel and couldn't help but sigh. After this dark turmoil came to an end, Qin Mu's shock points had soared to 1.8 billion. This is an extremely crazy number. System, how many shock points are needed to upgrade my cultivation to the next level? Qin Mu's heart moved and he suddenly asked. The current state of the host is the fairy land of red dust. Breaking through to the next state, the fairy king realm, requires the consumption of billions and a half shock points. The system replied. 1.5 billion shock points to be promoted to Immortal King? It's not beyond my expectation. Qin Mu said to himself. Previously, Qin Mu's promotion from the Great Emperor to the immortal realm of the Red Dust consumed 200 million shock points. The Red Dust Immortal is already a strong one among the true immortals. The gap between the true immortal realm and the Immortal King realm is undoubtedly more obvious than the gap between the Great Emperor realm and the mortal fairy realm. Throughout the ages, the number of immortal kings born in billions of heavens is countless. It is reasonable to need 1.5 billion shock points. Can he continue to improve above the Immortal King? How many more realms can be advanced beyond the Immortal King? What did Qin Mu think of in his mind and couldn't help asking? It can also be improved. Above the Immortal King, there are quasi-immortal emperors and immortal emperors. Above immortal emperors, there are 3 realms. The host is currently insufficient in strength and cannot unlock information related to this part. The system replied. Above the immortal emperor, are there still 3 realms that can be improved? Qin Mu couldn't help but clicked his tongue. For the first time, he felt that this system seemed to be far from being as simple as he imagined. Not only could it create various powerful secret realms, and even manifest various powerful beings, it could also easily improve its own strength. Does not require any training and understanding at all. Originally, he thought that even if the system could be improved, it would be the end of the improvement to the immortal Emperor realm. However, now the system told him that there is a third realm above the immortal Emperor. A realm that is even stronger than the immortal Emperor. And there are 3 levels of heaven. What is the origin of the system that he is bound to? Qin Mu began to think about this issue for the first time. He felt that everything was not that simple. Its power is far beyond his imagination. And its origin is also the same.